We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Surprise, surprise. Paulie Malignaggi hating on Gervonta Tank Davis. In this video, I'm going to take you through it. Let you know what Paulie Malignaggi says, then show you receipts, and let you know what I got to say to prove once and for all that Paulie Malignaggi is hating and he's ill-informed on a smear campaign trying to diss Gervonta Davis. So first, let's listen to what he said in a brand new interview. Roll the clip.
Correct you a little bit. He wanted the Lomachenko fight when Lomachenko was old. He didn't want the Lomachenko fight when Lomachenko was in his prime. Remember, Lomachenko was older than him. Remember, there was also Tevin Farmer in Gervonta Davis's weight at 130 pounds. He didn't go for that one either. Let's stick to the standard here. Lomachenko got tired of being used as an opponent. You know what I mean? Because he was constantly fighting the best fighters possible. Now that he's older, he got jobbed against Haney, and he's gonna say, "I'm gonna go back and become an opponent." That's not what I'm gonna do. That's not what I worked hard for. So he's gonna probably choose to exit the sport. You know what? He deserves it. He always chose to fight the best. He actually set the standard. If Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson were like Lomachenko, this fight would happen. I think Shakur Stevenson genuinely wants to fight the best fighters. I think it's Gervonta Davis that doesn't want to fight him. I think, yes, I understand it has to make business sense, but ultimately, why is it that Eastern fighters always make the fights and Western fighters somehow always find an excuse? This guy doesn't sell well, this guy's not popular, this guy's not this. Why do Eastern fighters always... Inoue fights the best fighters possible. All the former Soviet republics have fighters that fight the best fighters possible. Then you get to the West and you start seeing all the excuses. This guy doesn't do this guy doesn't do this. What's the problem? I don't understand. Because you get the most bang for your buck and you get the most entertainment. The history of boxing proves it, because back in the old days, even the Western fighters used to fight one another. You get the best fights possible, and boxing thrives. That's why people look to the old days, because boxing thrived. And back then, you didn't even have Eastern fighters. The Western fighters were the guys that were actually looking for the best opponents possible and being the best they could be. That's why people long for those days. That's why we're trying to bring them back here.
Well, I'm glad he got that off his chest, but this sounds very stupid. Okay. For starters, he says Lomachenko was sick of being the opponent. What are you talking about, bro? I want you guys to notice, because see, I've peeped it. This is Paulie Malignaggi's shtick. Bug your eyes out and talk fast, and people can't keep up, or they think you're cooking. It's that simple. I want you guys to hear what he's saying, though.
Remember, Lomachenko was older than him. Remember, there was also...
Lomachenko's older than him. Who cares? What does that have to do with anything?
Tevin Farmer in Gervonta Davis's weight at 130 pounds. He didn't go for that one either.
Okay, this is what I'm talking about. In the middle of him cooking about Lomachenko, he randomly brought up Tevin Farmer, which stay around in this video to the end. I'll break that Tevin Farmer down. But people like Paulie Malignaggi, you got to know how to approach them. They're so scatterbrained and all over the place in their cook that you have to just focus. So I want you to remember that and put it in your mental Rolodex that he said that he basically insinuated Tank ducked Tevin Farmer.
Let's stick to the standard here.
Did you see? He had to catch himself. Let's stick to the standard, because he's all over the place talking about Tevin Farmer when the conversation was about Lomachenko, and then the rest of what you're saying about Eastern fighters. And then you bring up Inoue, which is a bad example. Keep that in mind. I'll talk about that at the tail end of this video. But let's keep going.
Lomachenko got tired of being used as an opponent, you know?
Okay, Lomachenko got tired of being used as an opponent. What are you talking about? He was a champion. When he fought Teofimo, he was a champion. How is he being used as an opponent? This is the dumbest thing I've heard in, I don't know, in a month or so regarding boxing. How was Lomachenko being used as an opponent when he fought as a champion? It wasn't like he was being brought in, you know, with a 2-week camp and being you know expected to lose and everything was against him, he was the favorite. He just ended up losing to Teofimo, which I also predicted.
He was constantly fighting the best fighters possible. Now that he's older, he got jobbed against Haney.
See, more distraction. He got jobbed against Haney.
And he's gonna say, I'm gonna go back and become an opponent.
And he says he's gonna go back and become an opponent. And now he's trying to justify Lomachenko ducking Gervonta Davis and choosing to exit the game and potentially retire rather than get knocked out by Gervonta Davis. And he's commending this. Listen.
What I'm gonna do, that's not what I worked hard for. So
it's not what I worked hard for to become an opponent. So basically, people aren't gonna come out and just say what it is. So you have to learn to read between the lines. What Paulie is afraid of is that Lomachenko in 2024, if he would have fought against Gervonta Davis, or 2025, he's getting knocked out. Period. Paulie has zero faith that Lomachenko defeats this current Gervonta Davis. That's why he's stuck in the past and saying, oh, Loma was in his prime and blah, blah, blah. Now he's sick of being used as an opponent. So I'm glad. Now he wants Lomachenko to retire rather than, you know, have another L on his resume, this time by knockout. That's the fear, people.
He's gonna probably choose to exit the sport. You know what? He deserves it. He always chose to fight the best. He actually set the standard.
He deserves it. He just fought George Kambosos, and he's a champion. So he deserves to not fight a big fight against Gervonta Davis, one that people like Paulie Malignaggi and old media would lead you to believe that he was afraid of. Now you have your grand opportunity. You are in negotiations with Tank's team. The business has aligned. It makes sense. And then Lomachenko said, I'm not in the mood to fight. Duck.
If Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson were like Lomachenko, this fight would happen. I think Shakur Stevenson generally...
See, all over the place. If Gervonta and Shakur Stevenson were like Lomachenko, this fight would happen. Like, what? He
really wants to fight the best fighters. I think it's Gervonta Davis that doesn't want to fight him. I think, yes, I understand it has to make business sense. But ultimately, why is it that Eastern fighters...
So, again, I don't know. I used to think Paulie Malignaggi was sharper. Like, it sounds like he's losing his touch. He's not articulating this good. It's very scatterbrained. It's not cohesive, and he's all over the place. You know, you're talking about Loma. You bring up Tevin Farmer for some odd reason, which I'll get to at the tail end of the video, like I said. Then you say Lomachenko is sick of being used as an opponent. And then you say, oh, Tank and Shakur could fight if they were like Loma. And then you say, oh, but the Eastern fighters, they're the ones taking all the risks. Like, it's just laughable at this point. This sounds so diluted. It's laughable. As if Pitbull Cruz is not a good fighter. He just, after losing to Tank, he became a champion and beat Rolly. And then lost. It's not like he got knocked out versus El Rayo. He got outboxed. And they'll probably rematch. So we'll see how he looks in the rematch. Right? So most of Tank's wins have aged very well. Right? Ryan Garcia went on to, in essence, essentially knock out, in my opinion, or defeat Devin Haney. And he beat Oscar Duarte by stoppage. And Oscar Duarte, you know, it looks like he's a solid fighter. He just beat up Jojo Diaz and stopped him. And he was about to fight Kenneth Sims, but Kenneth Sims pulled out with the injury. What are we talking about? So Paulie has this fascination and this, he's like fixated on Eastern European fighters and European fighters.
Always make the fights, and Western fighters somehow always find an excuse. This guy doesn't sell.
So he says Western fighters always make an excuse, but then moments before that, he says he understands that boxing is a business. It doesn't sound like you understand, right? Sometimes the fights don't align. Like other people, it's not as simple as, like, for example, we'll use, he mentioned Tank and Shakur Stevenson, right? So Tank and Shakur Stevenson. He blamed it. You just heard him. He blamed it on Gervonta Davis. He said, I think Shakur wants to fight the best, but I don't think Tank Davis does. How can you blame Tank for Shakur? Shakur signed with Eddie Hearn on a 2-fight deal. We've already went over this on the channel. So I'm way many steps ahead of Paulie Malignaggi. If you know, Shakur out his own mouth has stated that Tank is the A side and the ball's in his court because he's the A side, right? Shakur said this. I think it was on, I don't remember what interview, but he said it's on YouTube for sure, right? So Shakur's already admitted to defeat in that realm of Tank being the A side. Why would you sign to Eddie Hearn in DAZN? That doesn't bring you closer to fighting against a Tank Davis. So if you how can you say Shakur really wants it and Tank doesn't, but then Tank is where he's always been as the A side and he is open, but Shakur went and did business with the very person that has no pull with PBC in their current situation, which is Eddie Hearn, right? And you're in Turkey. You're doing a 2-fight deal with them. You're locked up. Shakur is telling you he was supposed to fight Joe Cordina, fight no one asked for, gets hurt, so he's out for the remainder of the season or the year. And then he says when he comes back, he's supposed to be fighting William Zepeda in February. How is this Tank's fault? So that's what I'm saying. I implore you guys to listen and think about what people are telling you. See if it makes sense to you. And I promise you, if you know the facts and you're not a hater, it's gonna all make sense that these people are full of it, right? Blaming everything on Tank. How is that Tank's fault that Shakur is injured with a hand injury from a body shot that Shakur threw? How is it Tank's fault that Shakur signed a 2-fight deal with a promotional situation that doesn't bring him closer to where Tank Davis is at as the A side? Doesn't sound like a Tank problem, you know? And then he's trying to make it like Lomachenko is the gold standard. Listen, Lomachenko, his resume is pretty rough. Let's be honest. His resume is pretty rough. Most people give Loma the credit from his amateur career, but let's be real. His career as a pro, it's not that great. Like, imagine in boxing, a black fighter who's from America, right? Let's say some fighter from Vegas, Baltimore, wherever, but he's black, right? And old media was saying he's the best fighter ever, and you looked him up and his record is 18-3. Do you think he would be in the top 10 pound for pound with this? Like, if he was black, if Lomachenko was a black fighter, right? Like, let's say his name was Tyrone Jenkins. So Tyrone Jenkins Chano, right? And he was black from America, from America City, let's say the Midwest, wherever, Flint, and his record was 18-3. Do you think anybody would be praising him like they do to Lomachenko? Bro, his record's not that good. And Paulie's up here making all the excuses in the world. Oh, he got jobbed by Devin Haney. He's tired of being an opponent. Again, how is he tired of being an opponent? He was a champion. He was a champion when he fought Teofimo. So it's like, what are you talking about? And again, Loma could fight Anthony Corolla, Pedraza, a guy Tank already beat, and be given full credit. And then Paulie's making it sound like these are amazing wins. He brought Rigondeaux up 2 divisions and he was like almost 40 or was 40, right? Linares, everybody praised the Linares. Linares was getting beat up when Pacquiao and Freddie Roach was in his corner. I remember watching it, right? Look, he got 9 losses now. So let's find there. He fought Lomachenko in 2018, right? He was getting bodied back-to-back in 2011 by Antonio DeMarco, who Adrian Broner destroyed, and also his very next fight to Sergio Thompson. He got stopped in back-to-back fights. this one in the second round. So Lomachenko beating him 7 years later. Okay. People are acting like this is some legendary, crazy win. Like, oh, Loma, and Loma got dropped in the fight. So I don't see it. I think Lomachenko's solid. He's cool. He a good little fighter. But Paulie's doing way too much. And he's putting way too much on it, as if Loma's done so much and it done so crazy. He literally doesn't even have that many fights. He got 21 bouts. Like, you can't look at his resume and tell me it's like this crazy stacked resume. Like when he fought Gary Russell Jr., who's a good fighter, Gary Russell was never been a champion. And people were calling him a tomato can crusher on HBO. Right there. Like, so old media went from hating on Gary Russell, saying he fights tomato cans. I remember this distinctly. Gary Russell, he fought I think the dude was Mexican. He fought a Latino fighter. And then the guy was, his last name was something like Tamayo. And people were like, see, he's fighting a tomato can. His name's even Tamayo. And then people were making a joke. And then Lomachenko beats him via split decision, majority decision. And then people act like this was this incredulous win at the time. We later found out more about Gary Russell after that fight when he became a champion. Then in 2014, when Lomachenko beat him. And there's a moment in that fight where I believe Lomachenko got dropped and they didn't even score it. And it was for a vacant title, and it was like a majority decision win. So it's not even, that's like probably one of his best wins. And that was a guy who, again, Gary Russell at the time, and Gary Russell, I think, said he was mad sick during that fight. Lomachenko never went back and fought Gary Russell a second time when Gary Russell had became a champion and things like that. He never avenged the Salido loss. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Tank Davis, he don't really have to avenge any fights because he's knocking the dudes out for the most part. So there's nothing to really, you don't really have to avenge a Ryan fight. We seen the Ryan fight. We seen what you did to him. We seen the Frank Martin fight. We seen what you did to him. We seen the Barrios fight. Like, it's like open and shut cases. Lomachenko has a couple of fights where he probably could have rematched the guys. Teofimo, Gary Russell Jr., Devin Haney, Orlando Slee. He ain't rematched none of them. What we talking about? So the Tank hate continues. For starters, you guys heard Paulie Malignaggi. He said that Westerners are the fighters basically not taking chances, and he has this fixation with people Eastern European, but he also, if you pay attention, he named Inoue out of Japan, and he says Japanese fighter Inoue is always fighting the best person available. So let's fact check that. Now, Paulie Malignaggi, I put, sounds dumb as hating on Gervonta Davis, LOL. He said that Inoue consistently fights the best. He fights Sam Goodman. That's his next opponent on Christmas. Before that, he fought TJ Duheny, a guy with 4 losses. That's the best? Like, is TJ Duheny the best? When you got a guy like Akhmadaliev, right, who has 1 loss, only 1 sole loss, and it was via split decision, and he has a 75% knockout ratio, plus he's a southpaw. And we know sometimes southpaw versus southpaw, that could be problematic. Like Errol Spence had problems with Crawford, obviously, because Crawford fought the duration of the fight as a southpaw. And Errol Spence, he was probably used to fighting more orthodox fighters and not someone who's that good of a southpaw like Terrence Crawford. Plus, Akhmadaliev is ranked top 5. Pretty much he's ranked in all the sanctioning bodies, but Inoue has all the belts, so he's top 5 within the WBC, rated at number 4. Inoue's next opponent is rated and ranked at number 6, which is Sam Goodman, and his KO percentage is 42% versus MJ Akhmadaliev or whatever. He has a 75% knockout ratio, which I depict here in these attachments, right? So Akhmadaliev, this is his record, 12-1. That one sole loss was a split decision, which, you know, those fights can go either way. And he has a 75% knockout ratio, right? Here's the WBC. You see he's rated number 4. Inoue is fighting this guy who's rated number 6, right? And he's out of Australia. Now, Sam Goodman, you know, he is rated in some of the other sanctioning bodies. Cool. But I have a strong belief that a lot of times, like, what happens is, let's say Top Rank has a fighter and they want to put him in a certain fight. They have good relationships, especially with the WBO, but other sanctioning bodies. So they'll petition to have a person ranked to justify the match, right? They did it with, let's say, Tyson Fury. They found some random guy, Tom Schwartz, and said he was rated and ranked in 2 sanctioning bodies. So that became a justification for why Tyson Fury, instead of fighting Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder at that time in an immediate rematch, signed with ESPN and decided to fight that random guy. So you got to be careful with like champions and rankings. There's more than meets the eye, people. A lot of people, that's why I tell you, belts don't really matter in 2024. You had a fight like Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia outsold all these fights and did a $23-25 million gate roughly, and there was no belts on the line. So a lot of people, they get confused. They're thinking of boxing from yesteryear or something. So they go solely off rankings and they go solely off of, you know, who's rated and who has a belt. But it's just a lot of politics, a lot more than previously was the case. So Paulie's first example, and we're going to keep going and I'm going to keep bodying this, right, is not really a great one. And I found a pattern with old media when it's guys like Naoya Inoue or Triple G. There was a time period before the Kell Brook fight, I would say, where Triple G really wasn't fighting great names. He was fighting Daniel Gill and fighting guys. Who else did he fight? He fought Curtis Stevens. He fought, you know, just kind of run-of-the-mill guys. Dominique Wade. I don't even think Dominique Wade ever fought again. Hell no, goddamn Max's guys, you know, after the Triple G fight. I don't even think he ever fought again. So that shows you kind of where his career was. So old media has a habit of glorifying the fighters they like, which oftentimes are non-black, non-American fighters, and they say like, oh, this is perfect. And then they scrutinize people like Gervonta Davis. Like, oh my gosh, Gervonta Davis, how could he fight Lamont Roach? But they didn't say how come Lomachenko fought Rigondeaux, who was 2 divisions lighter, or Canelo fought Jermell Charlo, who was 2 divisions lighter, right? But then a guy who's an active champion in his prime, has a great record of 25-1-1, right? Him moving up is a problem. They don't have a problem when Triple G fought Kell Brook and he had to move up basically 2 weight classes, or when Canelo fought Amir Khan and he had to move up a division and a half to Canelo weight of 155. You see the pattern? But then when it's Triple G and Canelo, no problems. When it's a person like Tank, it's problems. And he's saying that Naoya Inoue is fighting all the best people. Trust me, Inoue is a good fighter. This guy has a 75% knockout ratio. I think one of the ingredients to try to beat a guy like Inoue, and I'm not saying he absolutely does. I'm not saying MJ absolutely does. But what I am saying is, if I had to take a pick between 2 fights, Sam Goodman or Akhmadaliev, to fight Inoue, I would much prefer the fight with Southpaw Akhmadaliev, because it's a better fight. I think it's a tougher fight, and he presents power, right? I showed you in the tweet that Sam Goodman has a 42% knockout ratio. We just seen him fight TJ Doheny, who has a higher KO percentage, and nothing on Goodman's record leads me to believe that he's ready to beat Inoue. And having a low percentage just further solidifies that. At least Akhmadaliev, he might be able to, you know, get the attention. Just like Luis Neri dropped Inoue. But Paulie Malignaggi is not bringing up any of these things because he's too busy hating on Gervonta Davis. Let's keep it going. And you know Boxing Ego come with receipts. So the other thing I really want to examine, because the Inoue, that was just light work. That was just light work, showing and proving a point that old media has no problems when it's non-black, non-American fighters who are fighting just run-of-the-mill guys. Like, they don't care if Inoue stays in Japan for his whole career and fights the Sam Goodmans and TJ Dohenys of the world, right? And then, God forbid, despite Triple G fighting Kell Brook and Canelo pulling up Jermell Charlo, God forbid, Inoue move up to fight Gervonta Davis because they'll have a conniption fit. They'll be like, oh no, this is too much weight, because they know Gervonta would knock out Inoue because the weight would matter in that situation, right? And that's the same thing with Paulie and Lomachenko, but we'll get to that shortly. I want to touch on what Paulie said regarding Tevin Farmer now. Make sure you guys subscribe. Receipts. I put, then Paulie Malignaggi lied. He basically suggested that Gervonta Davis avoided a fight with Tevin Farmer. So in his effort to illustrate that Tank is a big duck artist and won't fight anybody, right? He referenced Tevin Farmer as a guy that pretty much he's insinuating Tank avoided instead of fighting a challenging fight, right? So Tevin Farmer got sent an offer from Tank Davis's team to fight on Showtime. How soon we forget. This is why I'm the best in the business, and it's not even close. Mind you, I just said Showtime. Showtime is the network that fired and released Paulie Malignaggi. He used to be a commentator for Showtime. And during this the years where I would say Tank and Tevin Farmer was a trending topic or a hot topic in the sport of boxing, Paulie worked with Showtime. So how does he not remember this? And he has this revisionist history when he was with the network that this fight could have been on. And I'll prove it shortly. So I wanted to stress that Paulie worked for Showtime, and the offer was to fight on Showtime. See, the thing is, I think guys like Paulie Malignaggi, what they try to do is get animated, pop their eyes out, scream, and, you know, go up an octave in their voice. And that's how they try to influence or win the dialogue. Like if I have my eyes bulging out of my head and my voice is high pitched enough and I'm talking fast, then people will just believe what I'm saying. But you got to know the sport of boxing and have been here and have a great memory like myself. I'm not convinced by that. You can, oh, guys, why, bro? Why are you bragging about his IP? Blah, blah, blah. Like doing all that extra stuff, you're still missing the mark. So I don't care about, you know, popping your eyes out and doing all this to try to make a point. I listen to what you say, and what you have to say is not making sense. You know you done ucked up. You said that Tank didn't want to fight Tevin Farmer. That's what you insinuated. You know you done fucked up. You done fucked up, right? Boom. Tevin Farmer felt insulted by the $2 million offer for the Gervonta Davis fight. So at the time, because DAZN was foolishly overpricing. They were basically overpaying fighters, right? So Tevin Farmer said that he felt that 2 million was an insult, which is not, because it's not just 2 million, it's also 2 million plus the opportunity to beat a guy like Gervonta Davis and your whole career takes off. Even early back then, you know, during these years, these formative years for Gervonta Davis, he wasn't quite as big as what he is now, but he still was that dude, and people have been checking for him since the Jose Pedraza fight. So you would have still had a great opportunity even years ago, right, by beating him. And Tank still was the A-side back then. So what is Tevin Farmer talking about? He feels insulted, as if he's worth like several million more than that, right? Tevin Farmer says the $2 million offer that he received. So that implies that it was sent. You don't, how can you say something was received? If Amazon delivers your package, it's going to show delivered. And if you say I received it, then that means you got it, right? He says the fight against Tank is insulting and he's moving on. Boom. In case you needed more. Tevin Farmer turns down $2 million offer to face Gervonta Davis. It says, quote, "I'm fed up of Gervonta Davis. They only offered me $2 million to fight on Showtime." Tevin Farmer. How soon we forget. I told you I'm the best in the business. My style is unbeatable. I got it all up in here. So again, I ask you, what the is Paulie talking about? See all this bulging eye stuff. What are you talking about? You're referencing Tevin Farmer as if this is a fight that Gervonta ducked. But then I just showed you the receipts. I showed you the receipts of Tevin Farmer acknowledging the reception of an offer, which Leonard Ellerby can attest to, and I think he did on social media, that they sent Tevin Farmer an offer, right? If Tevin Farmer felt compelled to not take it, that's on him. But this is Tevin Farmer's record. 33-6-1, and he only has 8 knockouts in all these fights, right? You have nearly 40 fights, or you actually do have, 41 fights, I guess, right? And you have 8 knockouts. And people are making it like this is necessarily the person that would have schooled up Gervonta Davis. And here's the thing. He's about to fight against Zepeda. We'll see how he does there. But he ended up losing in 2020 to Jojo Diaz, a guy Devin Haney beat, right? So the reality is that, and he had already got knocked out, I wanted you guys to see that, by Pedraza earlier in his career, 2012, a guy that Tank destroyed and beat as a champion. Pedraza was the champion and Tank was the challenger. So Tevin Farmer got knocked out by him, right? So I really think Tank would have won at any point in this particular fight. But nonetheless, Tevin Farmer ended up losing. And then you see right after he lost to Jojo Diaz, right, he didn't come back for 3 years. And then he appeared in a new division. So his name and brand went down during these parts. Might I add, there was also a particular period of time and year where Tevin Farmer got shot. So he was in recovery. So again, people like Paulie Malignaggi, they want to do all this like posturing and histrionics and, you know, suggesting that Tank ducked Tevin Farmer, but you're not even telling the whole story. He didn't say anything about how Tevin Farmer, notice me, I got time. Today I got time, cuz. Notice I'm taking my time. I'm breaking it down. I'm showing receipts. I'm telling you Tevin Farmer got shot. You guys can look it up. I'm showing you the interviews where he said he refused a $2 million offer. Paulie is just having his eyes bug out, and suggesting that Tank don't want to fight nobody. So you tell me who won. You know what I mean? It makes perfect sense what I'm saying. So people, they continue to hate on Gervonta Davis, but they don't even have the facts lined up. And while Paulie is so busy praising Eastern Europeans and stuff, it's really truly biased. And I think I know what is causing it, but it's unfortunate because it's unfair. You don't ever see a problem like when Lomachenko, someone Paulie gave a whole bunch of credit to, when he was fighting certain people like Anthony Toyota Corolla or whatever his name is in LA, you don't hear nothing about it. But Tank's fighting Frank Martin, an undefeated southpaw who's actually good, right? And Paulie's acting like, and it's not just Paulie, for the record, old media, they're acting like Tank needs to impress me. I'm not really impressed. And then it's so funny because you have race fans where when a Mexican fighter, El Rayo, beats Pitbull Cruz, everybody hoisted El Rayo up like, oh, he's a good fighter, which he is. But guess what? Tank had already done that. Tank already beat Pitbull Cruz one-handed. So it's ironic when it's a guy like Tank, a black fighter from Baltimore. We got to list you, right? On the avenue. When it's a fighter like Tank, his resume is so bad, but then the same opponents he beats are now heralded after he beats them. Like Mario Barrios is a champion right now. When Mario Barrios beat Ugas and Maidana's brother, Fabian Maidana, right, and almost stopped Ugas and became a champion, when he almost stopped Keith Thurman, even though he lost that fight, everybody likes Mario Barrios. Keep in mind, Keith Thurman, he can thump. He's a power puncher at welterweight. He didn't stop Barrios. Neither did Ugas. But guess who did? This person you see on the screen, Gervonta Davis. You see what I'm saying? So it's funny. A lot of Tank's wins, they actually have aged good. You look at Ryan Garcia. People are like, oh, he wasn't ready. Well, one fight after the Tank loss, Ryan Garcia comes and obliterates Devin Haney and drops him a gang of time and, has a field day with him. Right? Hector Luis Garcia at the time was in prime, undefeated fighter, and he had just beat primetime Cobra. Rolly Romero, big puncher, undefeated fighter. And again, people loved it when Rolly and Pitbull was announced. But then when Tank's, this is after Tank. This is like Tank's leftovers. You see what I'm saying? Gamboa, Tank beat him and stopped him. Devin fought him his next fight. So it's convenient that people don't give Tank credit for his resume, but then when guys after Tank fight his leftovers, they're heralded. Like Devin Haney at the time, people are like, oh, he's fighting Gamboa on DAZN. This is good. Keith Thurman's fighting Barrios. Ugas fighting Barrios. Now these are all of a sudden good fights, but then these are guys that Tank beat mostly by stoppage, but you don't give credit to Tank for beating these guys. And here's the thing. Old media is not going to tell you this, but I will. Gervonta Davis, mark my words, he is one of the few souls in this sport, this current generation, that actually fights in a division that he is supposed to be in. Meaning, he's not ballooning up to 200 pounds come fight night. He's been maintaining his weight before he enters, his actual fight camp in recent years. His height is his height. He's listed at 5'5.5", so he's not the tallest brother in the division, right? Meanwhile, you look at these Teofimos, these Devins, these Shakurs, the Jermaine Ortiz. These guys were fighting at 35. They look huge. Jermaine Ortiz looked huge. Pause. right? You have Ryan Garcia, huge. He didn't even make the weight versus Devin Haney at 140 pounds. Devin Haney fought Regis Prograis his first fight at 140. He rehydrates more than the 140-pound champion at the time, Regis Prograis, like 20 some odd pounds. Tank is literally one of them ones where he's actually campaigning in the division he belongs. He probably could make 130 easy if you look at some of his weights. But see, this is too advanced. This is too advanced. Tank weighed in his last fight 133.5. You don't think he can lose an additional, 3.5 pounds if he wanted to? I'm not saying there's no sacrifice there, but I guarantee you he can. Maybe don't eat that protein or eat them carbs, and then he's there. He definitely could do it, right? So I actually respect Tank because that reminds me of the Floyd Mayweathers and the Pacquiaos. They were just beating guys. Pacquiao didn't have to be bigger than Margarito or Cotto to beat him. Floyd didn't have to be bigger than De La Hoya or Canelo or Maidana to beat these guys, or Chico Corrales. Same thing with Tank. Tank is beating people off skill, ring IQ, precision, those types of things. So while Paulie Malignaggi is hating, there's a lot to be celebrated from Tank. Not to mention he got the game on smash in terms of he's putting on movies. So y'all got to make sure you pay attention where you get your information from, because I see a lot of people running around with the same talking points. Oh, Tank did this, and people lying about his dates and his venues and his fights and who he's fighting. Y'all, for the people that don't like Tank Davis, y'all sure have his name in y'all mouth a lot, right? And then now you got Paulie Malignaggi talking about things he doesn't know about, saying that somehow Tevin Farmer, Tank avoided him. I just showed you. How did he avoid him if he felt insulted? And here's the thing. When we're talking about a negotiation, that's exactly what it is. Someone sends you an offer. If you really didn't like it and you have leverage, maybe you send them a counter offer, or you continue to negotiate. You don't just go public and say, oh, I hate the offer, fight's canceled. If you really want it, you stick with it. Shout out to Ryan Garcia. Here's why. Ryan Garcia said he wanted Tank, and he did not stop until he got Tank. Simple as. Ryan told the world he wanted a big fight. Ryan said, he's over the anxiety and all that, and he wanted to prove it, and he wanted a big fight, and he told his team, Golden Boy, give me the Tank fight. I don't think Golden Boy truly wanted to make the fight, personally. Plus, it involved another promoter where De La Hoya has beef with PBC and Al Heyman and disses them and stuff like that. So I don't think De La Hoya was confident that Ryan could beat Gervonta Davis. So credit to Ryan for pushing for what he wanted. So you mean to tell me Tevin Farmer at the time couldn't have done the same thing? And it's funny because these goofballs, like these old media, like people who support Paulie Malignaggi and these fans that like what he's saying, oh, Paulie's cooking and all these goof troops, right? They'll say stuff like, take the short money and leave a legend, right? Meaning, take whatever you're offered. They say this when it's convenient. Take whatever you're offered and you beat the guy and become the guy, and then now you could call the shots. Like, remember they did this to Deontay Wilder. They say, Wilder, take whatever Eddie Hearn and Joshua are offering you. You only have one belt. He beat Klitschko. He's doing good numbers in the UK. Take the 12.5 million. Take short money, and then if you beat him, then you could become the guy, right? But they don't say that when it's not convenient, like to Tevin Farmer, because they don't like Tank. So they didn't say Tank offered you $2 million and an opportunity. Take the $2 million and then beat Tank, become the guy, and then now you could call the shots. They only do that, and it's reserved. You notice a pattern for certain fighters, like black fighters, Deontay Wilder. They'll say, hey, just take what you're offered. If you could beat him, show us, and then you become the man. How come that same rule doesn't apply for Tevin Farmer? Like, and for real, like, who is Tevin Farmer to be turning down $2 million for a fight. like he was put, like, come on. I'm saying, and I'm not trying to say it like on no diss stuff. You know, me and Tevin, we've been cool. But I'm just saying from the perspective of, you're not like this big high ticket. You've never really been the ticket seller kind of guy, like a Canelo, like a Cotto, a Pacquiao, a Floyd, a Tank. So like you get an offer and an opportunity and y'all had beef, you're supposed to take that. Especially if it's not like they offered you like pennies on a dollar, like peanuts. You know what I'm saying? Like if they really wanted to be shiesty, they could have said like 450 or 500K, right? And here's the thing. Just to prove my point, this is how old media works and this is how they think. Recently, Eddie Hearn was trying to get Boots Ennis a big fight with Brian Norman. Brian Norman says, we want X amount, the Normans. They say we want X amount of dollars because we want to clear $1 million because we got to pay Top Rank to be and appear on DAZN. And we got taxes and fees and trainer fees and all this type of stuff. And we'd be fighting in Philly where Boots is from. That's another more recent example of what I'm talking about. The fans said, oh yeah, Brian Norman, you don't really bring nothing to the table. You're supposed to take this offer. It was like 1.1 million or whatever, right? They said he was supposed to take that money. Do what Eddie Hearn says, take it, shut up, and beat Gervonta Ennis if you can. But then conveniently, the same thing goes for Tevin Farmer, who's admitting that he felt insulted and didn't take it for whatever reason. Maybe he had gotten advice otherwise or whatever, and he felt like he didn't need it. So you can't blame Tank. If Tank was scared, his team wouldn't have sent an offer. Simple.